The police in China have adopted an unusual method of encouraging senior citizens to recognise fraud. Officers give lessons in how to avoid becoming a victim of a scam, but then test the older people on what they've learned in class. And those who pass are offered free products from a local supermarket. Kerry Allen, who analyses developments in China for BBC Monitoring, has been telling me retired Chinese people are vulnerable to fraud.
One of the things that I've seen in recent months is a real focus on online fraud because people take advantage of the fact that elderly people might not be able to get around technologies that are increasingly used for e-commerce, for example. People in China are aware that there is now an ageing population because of the one-child policy, and that means that the younger population is much smaller than the older population, and so you've got a lot of elderly people now who are seen as vulnerable and easy targets. But yeah, it's not just online fraud as well, it's general kind of fraud, watching your personal belongings, for example. There has been a lot of media circulated online to very much make old people aware that there are people who will exploit your privacy, and if you give away data that you shouldn't.
So an incentive to be much more careful for these senior citizens. They're being offered free items from the supermarket, things like socks or towels. But they also have to sit a test, don't they, to prove that they are getting this knowledge of how to recognise fraud.
This supermarket enables people to obtain credit based on the knowledge that they acquire, and then they can use this credit to, be able to get things like toilet paper.
It's interesting to note how older people are being shown how to use a smartphone, for example, to scan a QR code. But is ownership of a smartphone that common among people of the retired generation in China?
China's done a lot of promotion in recent years of its expansions with 4G and then 5G. There's also been a lot of promotion of domestic handsets, for example, companies like Huawei that are offering much cheaper options for smartphones than, say, international competitors like Apple. But also there has been a real push from the government for the older generation to use smartphones, very much connected to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what you've had is China's had a very strict track and trace system. If there are cases in your area, you have to get used to scanning. For example, if you want to get on a bus, you scan your QR code rather than putting money in a little chute. And there have been a lot of frustrations amongst the elderly about this, that they can't get their heads around this system that they're suddenly being asked that they have to use. So there has been a lot of promotion to try and encourage the elderly very, very quickly to get used to smartphone technologies. But at the same time, because they've been asked so quickly, they become vulnerable then in kind of finding their way around the internet.
So, Kerry, is there an underlying message maybe here about Chinese culture, the idea of a society that needs to safeguard older people in a country which has certainly gone through remarkable economic change during the lifetimes of those people?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And but at the same time, there are questions about things like pensions, for example, and who's going to look after these elderly people. I mean, I've seen statistics indicating that by 2035, a quarter of China's population, and that's hundreds of millions of people, are going to be over the ages of 60.
That's an intriguing thought for the future in China. Kerry Allen from BBC Monitoring.